If you want to support me even further, use code RestAssured in the Epic Game Store and follow me on all my socials. Thank you. Alright, what's going on guys? It's Rest, and in this video, I want to go over a build that's going to let you freeze everything and literally let you have unlimited melees on the Warlock subclass. Now, the subclass I'm talking about is going to be Shapebinder, and if you don't know, the melee for this is going to basically let you shoot out a little ice staff that's going to shoot out a ball and will freeze everything that it hits. This build is not only good for just normal content, it's also really good for in-game as well, because you're going to be able to keep your melee up at all times. You're going to be able to freeze higher health targets or even things like champions, and you're going to be able to just make everything immobile. I would actually say that this is probably one of the strongest builds on the Warlock right now in the game, and it's going to take advantage of one of the seasonal mods and just make it absolutely broken. On top of that, it's also going to involve some elemental wells, some charger light, and some stasis shards. So jumping over to my Warlock, as you can see, we're running Claws, Cara, and Monte Carlo. As you probably already know, those two paired together are going to be extremely well for a melee focused build. But honestly, if you don't want to run Monte Carlo, you can run things like Agger Scepter right here, which is also really good. I will have another build coming out about this gun as well, dedicated to this, but for this I do like to run Monte Carlo just in case you don't get your melee back. But pretty much at all times, you're always going to have your melee back. So talking about melee, let's just jump right into the shape bonder aspects and fragments we're going to be running. For aspect, we're going to have ice flare bolts. This is just going to let you freeze additional targets once you actually freeze somebody with your melee. It's pretty good. Then you're going to have glacier harvest. The freezing targets create stasis shards around the frozen targets. Higher tier combatants create more shards. So this is what's going to allow you to get your melee back a lot on top of our fragments down here. So we're going to run Whisper of Fractures. Your melee recharges faster when you are near 2 or more targets. Then Whisper of Hunger increases the melee energy gain from picking up stasis shards. Then Whisper of Conduction, nearby stasis shards track to your position. And then finally, Whisper of Fissures increases the damage and size of the burst of stasis when you destroy your stasis crystals or defeat frozen targets. So as you see, these three right here are going to be all around getting those shards and heavily focus on your melee recharge rate. And then Whisper of Fissures is just going to make so when you actually kill the frozen targets, you do a lot of damage to other enemies around them. Now, to make the melee even better, we're going to go over here to our mods, and we're going to have things like heavy-handed. While charger light, regain half of your melee energy when you use a charged melee ability, consuming 1 stack of charger light. Now, you might be asking, how are we going to get charger light? And that is with elemental charge. So you become charged light when you pick up an elemental well. If the elemental well matches the type of your subclass element, you gain 2 stacks of charger light, which is really good. Now, to get charge light, we're going to be running elemental shards. This mod right here completely changes the way you can play an elemental well build on stasis, and it reads: stasis shards do not count as stasis elemental wells for you. This does not apply to Crucible, Trials, or Iron Banner, but it is super strong in any PvE content. So now every single time you pick a shard up, you also are picking an elemental well up, which can go on and proc your charger light and other additional benefits like the ability cooldown, on top of what the shards already give you with the melee energy. Now, I'm also going to be running melee well maker, so whenever you get a power melee kill, which will be all the time, you also will spawn an additional stasis well, which again can help proc things like charge light. You're going to constantly be charge light. Literally just throwing your melee out is going to obviously proc the shard. Then you can pick the shard up to get charge light, and you're always going to have heavy handed proc 24/7. Now, if you want to take something else other than melee well maker, because it's not that needed, I would recommend well potency. So whenever you pick up a elemental well and matches your subclass type, you actually gain some super energy. This is going to be really good for getting your super fast. And speaking of getting your super fast, I'm also going to be running Font of Wisdom. So whenever we do pick a elemental well that matches your subclass type, you essentially get a hunter and elect. So those two combined, if you want to run Wall of Potency, would be very good combined together. But I just like running melee well maker just to get even more elemental wells and just be able to stack a lot of ability cooldown up. Now, other mods I'm running are just 5 strength mods, so I can get up to 100 strength, because obviously you want your strength to be as high as possible if you're on a melee focused build. Then I'm going to be running Thermoclastic Blooming right here. So defeating a combatant with a solar stasis melee creates an orb of power. You're always going to be doing this. You're going to be creating orbs of power everywhere. So now whenever you freeze an enemy, you're creating elemental wells, you're creating elemental shards, and you're creating orbs of power. Picking all those up is obviously going to give you a lot of energy for everything. And then I'm also running things like invigoration. So whenever we pick up an orb of power, you also going to get reduced melee cooldown. So since I said you're creating all 3 of those, picking up all of that, the stasis well, the shards, and the orbs themselves are all giving you melee energy back. And that is pretty much the premise of this build. Literally just throw your melee to keep reprocking your melee over and over again, and you can literally just have infinite melees the entire time. As you see in the gameplay, it is absolutely ridiculous the crowd control that you can do. And not only that, the melee itself kills a lot of enemies. So you see at some points you're just creating 7 to 8 orbs of power, you know, just randomly a clump of enemies, you just kill all of them, they all create orbs of power, which is really good. Not only does it benefit you to get your melee back, it's also giving your team super energy and further increase on whatever builds they may be running. And yeah, it's just insane. Like I said in the beginning as well, this is also really good for in-game content Not only can you run anti-barrier auto with your Monte Carlo, you're going to be getting your melee back super fast, and like you could just freeze champions, higher health targets, just any big clump of enemies that need to not be running at you. You could just throw a simple melee out, run up, get your shards, and they also track to you since you're running Whisper of Conduction, and you're literally always going to have this charge just to be able to stop anything that's coming at you. Now, for other weapons I do recommend running is something like a sniper rifle. If you want to run a select shotgun, you can, but I like running my Adept Azume with the Adept Big One spec. It's really good just for taking out longer range targets. And then also I run Ascendancy. This is insanely good because since you're creating orbs of power literally everywhere with your melee ability, you're going to have max explosive light at all times, which if you don't know actually did get a buff. This is the highest damage rocket in the game right now. So with explosive light and creating orbs of power everywhere, like I said, always going to have this, and you can literally just always have a gun to be able to do an insane amount of burst damage whenever you get to a bossing scenario. So not only are you really good for bossing, you're also really good for crowd control and just mobbing in general. And this does stray away from a generic build and actually focuses on a melee build and an in-game PvE content, which never really happens that much. It's all things like Thermoclastic Bloom and the Elemental Shards mod, just being able to constantly recharge melee over and over again, and it is super strong. I would highly recommend trying this out, and you can also run this on the Hunter as well. This is not just unique to Warlock. Obviously on the Hunter you don't have to run Claws Vomit Car because they just get 2 melees, but you can also run this with some different aspects and achieve the exact same thing, and arguably could be even better. Like I said, I highly recommend trying this out on a Warlock or Hunter. And if you did enjoy this or learned something new, consider doing all the normal YouTube stuff, subscribing, dropping a like. It really helps me out and our community grow by getting these videos out there for everyone to see, and I truly appreciate it. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.